President Isaias underlined that policy forecasts and analysis must be predicated on the wider framework of global and geopolitical realities that have unfolded in the past 3 decades. In this spirit, Eritrea had originally submitted its non-controversial and widely accepted proposal in mid-2022. President Isaias further stressed that the war, which had no rationale in the first place and that has been fueled by external intervention, must come to an immediate end.
For Africa. In this video, we delve deep into the intricate tapestry of the Horn's geopolitics, exploring the historical context, current power struggles, and the potential implications of the Ethiopia-Somaliland agreement. We will examine the intricate web of relationships between Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, Somaliland, Djibouti, and the various external powers vying for influence in the region. By analyzing the underlying motivations and potential consequences of the Ethiopia-Somaliland agreement, we will shed light on its potential impact on the future of the Horn of Africa. Would this agreement pave the way for greater regional cooperation and stability, or will it further destabilize an already fragile region?
President Isaias underlined that policy forecasts and analysis must be predicated on the wider framework of global and geopolitical realities that have unfolded in the past 3 decades. In this perspective, President Trump's signature policy stance of MAGA, Make America Great Again, contains an implicit recognition that the U.S. is not the dominant power in terms of key economic, military, technological, and influence soft power parameters, as envisaged by the architects of a unipolar world order, whose hallmark was unassailable and overbearing U.S. dominance in all the determinant parameters and manifestations of power. U.S. containment policies, primarily geared towards China due to its rising preeminence in the economic and technological domains and growing international influence, as well as against Russia, have not evidently achieved their pronounced objectives. It is doubtful now whether envisaged protectionist policies will reverse the trend. The aspiration of the vast majority of the world's peoples is for a new international order based on justice and that promotes fairness and the collective well-being of humanity, not architectures of confrontation under the rubric of bipolarity or multipolarity. Within this broad framework, and as one cannot throw the dice to decipher, at this early stage or map out all the possible scenarios on how the policy of the Trump administration will ultimately pan out, it would be inappropriate to make premature conclusions. And while doing our homework, we must strive to foster constructive engagement with an open mind.
He emphasized that the tripartite summit, a critical step toward fostering regional stability, has been deliberately misrepresented. Instead of celebrating its positive outcomes, these campaigns gloss over its role in cultivating consensus for enduring peace in the Horn of Africa. President Isaias reaffirmed that Eritrea's core policy has always been about promoting stability, cooperation, and complementarity across the Horn of Africa, the Nile Basin, and the Red Sea. Eritrea has no interest in destabilizing Ethiopia. Instead, mutual consultations among neighboring countries are essential to dispelling mistrust and fostering constructive collaboration. On Ethiopia's internal challenges, President Isaias pointed to the institutionalized policy of ethnic polarization embedded in the 1994 constitution. He described it as the root cause of periodic tensions, conflicts, and the country's struggles with nation building. He highlighted how the 1998 border war, ostensibly over Badme, was a fallout of this misguided policy. External meddling further compounded the issue, even after the matter was resolved through binding arbitration. On domestic development, President Isaias detailed Eritrea's blueprint for 2025, which focuses on key sectors such as water infrastructure, energy, housing, transport, manufacturing, and investment. Eritrea has established a vast network of large and small dams, with a capacity of up to 330 million cubic meters, and plans to expand irrigation and reforestation efforts as part of future development. In the energy sector, Eritrea is investing in hybrid systems powered by thermal, solar, wind, and geothermal technologies. Regarding housing and transport, construction companies will be restructured to implement new housing schemes, and subsidized buses will be introduced to improve mobility in underprivileged areas. The government also aims to revitalize the manufacturing sector by focusing on value addition to strengthen the economy. Additionally, Eritrea is encouraging private investment, especially from the diaspora in sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and mining, alongside traditional industries such as hospitality.
Religious agendas coupled with external meddling precipitated cyclical crises in the country, culminating in the spontaneous rebellion of 2019. While the solution to the conflict in the Sudan naturally rests with and remains the sovereign prerogative of the Sudanese people, this cannot inhibit us from making modest contributions due to our historical ties and overarching policy of promoting a stable and safe neighborhood. In this spirit, Eritrea had originally submitted its non-controversial and widely accepted proposal in mid-2022. The broad outlines of the proposal essentially envisaged entrusting the transition to the Sovereign Council, which had in fact earned the mandate, if only by default, and which would act as a bridge to a safe path to ensure that the situation does not spin out of control. This would also preclude potentially dangerous rivalries among fractious traditional political parties and groups. President Isaias further stressed that the war, which had no rationale in the first place, and that has been fueled by external intervention, must come to an immediate end. External interventions and the proliferation of initiatives which essentially exacerbate the tragic situation must also come to an end. Efforts must be directed towards cultivating consensus in the region. Our primary preoccupation has always been to prevent and avoid costly wars. In this spirit, we will not lose hope, and we have to work for and foster stability, cooperation, and complementarity in the region. Also because these problems essentially emanate from and serve external agendas.
Turkish President Erdogan stood alongside Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud as they unveiled the Ankara Declaration, a pact aimed at fostering peace and cooperation. President Mohamud expressed heartfelt gratitude to Turkey, saying, "We are grateful for Turkey's efforts. Somalia will be a true friend of Ethiopia, now and in the years to come." Prime Minister Ahmed echoed this sentiment, emphasizing the shared bonds between Ethiopia and Somalia. He stated, "We are not just neighboring countries, we are brothers. We share a blood bond, and our destinies are intertwined." As discussed in our previous video, relations soured earlier this year when Ethiopia struck a deal with Somaliland to use the Red Sea port of Berbera. This agreement exacerbated tensions with Somalia, given its stance on Somaliland's unrecognized independence. For Ethiopia, access to ports is a critical issue. Since losing its Red Sea ports following Eritrea's independence in 1991, the country has faced significant challenges as a landlocked nation. Despite these disputes, the two nations share a history of collaboration. Thousands of Ethiopian soldiers have sacrificed their lives ensuring Somalia's stability, demonstrating the deep connections between their peoples. The Ankara Declaration, hailed as a triumph of Turkey's peace diplomacy, symbolizes a new chapter. It underscores the importance of regional stability and mutual development for the Horn of Africa. Fahrettin Altun described the declaration as one of Turkey's finest diplomatic achievements under President Erdogan's leadership, adding that it sets a model for global peace initiatives. Meanwhile, in Somaliland, a different narrative unfolds. Abdirahman Mohamed Iro has been sworn in as president after peaceful elections. His inauguration marks a significant milestone for Somaliland, which continues to seek international recognition despite remaining unrecognized globally. Iro's inauguration was attended by high-profile delegations, including the US and EU ambassadors. However, China condemned Taiwan's participation, reiterating its One China policy and opposing any official exchanges between Taiwan and Somaliland. From the heated battles in Ras Kamboni to the peaceful transition in Somaliland, the Horn of Africa stands at a critical juncture. Will Somalia find a path to peace? Can Somaliland's democratic milestones gain global recognition? Only time will tell.
Briefly, the Somaliland breakaway region is a result of the Cold War legacy. As the Cold War ended, Somalia also descended into disintegration. Why Somalia was kept for over 3 decades in a state of disintegration has largely to do with the unipolar hegemony, the era of unipolar hegemony after the end of the Cold War, the U.S. imperialism entering where there is no force now to counter us. We can do whatever we want. So recall, if you will, for example, what the former commander NATO commander Wesley Clark revealed at one time in 2001, 2, I don't know, 2003, Pentagon paper in which they had a plan to plunge the entire region, Middle East, North Africa, Horn of Africa, into chaos. 7 countries were targeted, beginning with Iraq, then Syria, then Lebanon, then Libya, then Sudan, then Somalia, and finally to Iran. The 7 countries. That's exactly what unfolded. If you look at it, why did he make that revelation? I don't know. Sometimes they're arrogant. They have this in-your-face attitude. This is what we're planning for you, and we're going to do it. Type of hubris of polar hegemony, if you will, the craziness. But in the Middle East and in our region, Horn of Africa, that's what happens. Sudan has disintegrated into chaos as it was targeted. Somalia, the same fate. The only country remaining is Iran. But to come back to the point, because I have to, in the brief moment that I'm given, I have to cover a lot of ground. To come back to the point, Somaliland was a breakaway. Meantime, in the rest of Somalia, the struggle was going on to reconstitute and to emerge from the ashes of state collapse. Meantime, the client regime of TPLF in Ethiopia, U.S. client regime, was continuously prodded by its patron, the U.S., to unleash chaos in that part of the world, to divide Somalia along clan lines, to constantly, prevent the state from re-emerging from chaos. So the Somaliland breakaway regime in the north remained in a state of limbo for 30 years. It never got recognition, international recognition, except maybe Taiwan, but Taiwan itself is in a state of limbo, non-recognition. Meanwhile, Somalia was beginning to re-emerge from the chaos, a central government in Mogadishu, some sort of semblance of army, navy. In Ethiopia, too, the TPLF regime was ousted, so this reformist government led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali came to power. There were a lot of hopes in the beginning for a new beginning, but those hopes are dashed now. I have to be brutally honest, call a spade a spade. Ethiopia is in a state of chaos also, disintegrating towards state collapse. So this desperate prime minister there, Abiy Ahmed Ali, is maneuvering to hoodwink the people and to divert their attention away from the urgent task in Ethiopia, the economic collapse, the ongoing wars in the Amhara region, genocidal wars, some would charge. So to divert that, he's bringing this port issue, the sea access issue, which never is really an issue. And so a memorandum of understanding was signed with the breakaway regime of Somaliland, which has no authority, no legality, sovereignty to give away coastal, access for naval base or what have you, according to the memorandum of understanding. And this has created an uproar. It infringes on Somalia's sovereignty because the world, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, the international community, the United Nations, African Union, only recognizes the central government in Mogadishu, the capital, as having the authority and sovereignty over the entire Somalia. So this was a breach, a reckless breach that provokes Somalia. It is an act of aggression, and they have condemned it.